Good day, everyone. Today we're going to be starting a new series with one of my absolute most favorite games of all time, Dwarf Fortress. If you've been keeping up with my blog, you've read some of my articles that I've written about Dwarf Fortress, and you know that I enjoy it quite a bit for the story and just for getting to build things. It's kind of fun. The graphics can be a bit of a turn off for some people, but I think that it encourages you to use your imagination, and it's just a really, really fun game. Some of the things that you'll see in the game that will happen are pretty ludicrous and definitely make for good story fodder. So, the way that I'm going to do this series is I'm going to start out with kind of like a part zero in the series where I'm going to go into actually how to acquire the game, which is free, and how to get the game set up, because that can be a little bit of a challenge for newer players. There's a lot of options, a lot of menus, and it can be really daunting. You can know that the game is good. You've heard many great things about the game. Lots of people love Dwarf Fortress, but when you actually go to play the game, you're just immediately overwhelmed by the menus and the choices. Uh, so as you can see, I've got uh, a Google homepage here open, and I've already got Lazy Newb Pack typed into the search bar. That's going to be your first step. You can play Dwarf Fortress just fresh off uh, the website from the maker, but you're going to lose um, a little bit of coherence by doing that. To actually use the in-game user interface for some things can be challenging. It's difficult. I've been playing Dwarf Fortress not as long as some people, but I've been playing it quite a bit, and I don't even just go straight through the game menus. I prefer to use the Lazy Newb Pack. So that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to type in Lazy Newb Pack, and then when you hit enter, the very first result that you get is going to be the wiki. So you'll click on that, and if you go down here, there are links to the three different current packs. There's one for Windows, one for Mac, and one for Linux. So you'll want to pick the one that corresponds to your system. For me, it's Windows, so you click on that, and then it'll take you to the Bay 12 forums, and then what you'll do is you'll click this link here that says download the latest starter pack. And then there are some instructions about what to do. It's pretty simple. Just download, unzip the folder, and then find the exe in the unzipped folder and run that. Now, you click on that, and then you're going to want to click download now, and then unzip it like we talked about. So once you have that done, you will have something that will look like this. This is the Lazy Newb Pack. And you see there's a lot of options here. So I will go through these very briefly. Population cap. Basically, this will put a cap on your fortress, how big it can get. And this can be important if you have an older computer. Because one of the biggest killers of fortresses in DF is actually getting too many people in your fortress. If you have an older computer, because of the way that the game is coded, it only runs on a single processor, and if it's an older computer, it can slow down a lot because the game is making calculations for not only the characters that are inside of your fortress, but also for the whole world. So if you've got maybe like a slower computer, you might want to set this population cap a little bit lower. That will kind of cut you out of some of the features of the game. Specifically, like you have to have a population in your city of over like 140 to be able to become the monarch of your dwarven civilization. So there are some other things too, but you can still have a lot of fun even with a small population fortress. So just play around with that. Child cap, basically, this is a ratio of children in your fort. So children in your fort, it's kind of a mixed bag. Children they can't be assigned jobs unless you cheat, and the only work that they will do is hauling, and they'll just do it whenever they want to. So, but you still do have to feed them and clothe them, and they can still have moods. They can get upset, have tantrum spirals, etc. Strict population cap. This is the population cap that will, like it says, it'll block births. So this is the hard and fast number. Invaders in Dwarf Fortress, as you build your kingdom, your fortress, you'll accumulate wealth through the goods that you produce, also through the things that you make within your fortress, like decorations and such. And that can attract outside invaders, like it says, goblins. Other mythical creatures can come too. And if you have this on, then they can show up. It's not like a 100% thing. It's going to happen at X amount of time. It's random. If you have it set to no, they will not come and attack you. So I would say for new players, you would probably want to set this to no. But if you want to have more fun, then leave it set to yes. Cave-ins, basically, in this game, when you're mining around, you can cause cave-ins if you don't pay attention to having structured support for the ceilings. Normally, it's not really a big deal that you have to worry about. I've only really had one cave-in, and it was definitely because of something stupid that I did. So, but for like a new player, you'd probably just want to set this to no. Temperature, it does exactly what you think it would do. Whether there are seasons in the game, different embark locations where you settle can have different temperature variations. So if you have temperature set to yes, then if there's water on your map and you're in a place that can get cold in the winter, the water will freeze up. That can add a little bit of complexity to the game. So for a newer player, I'd probably say no. Also, a thing to consider is temperature calculations can and will slow down your FPS, your calculations. So weather is just kind of it's kind of a bit of fluff at this point. It still is kind of cool. So really, it's just your personal preference. Some people think that weather does affect calculations. Some people say don't. I haven't read anything conclusive, so I don't really have anything to add to that. Entomb pets, if you've got this on, then if you build coffins, because you have to bury your dwarves when they die, if you build coffins and set up that coffin, the people are going to put their pets in the coffins too. So because dwarfs can have pets, and they care a great deal about them. Something that can happen in the game is dwarves can have what's called moods. They can get kind of like a wild hair where they want to make something, and they will claim a workshop, which you'll see, and they'll run around and scavenge a bunch of materials, and then they will construct a legendary item, which it can be good, it can be useless. And it can also be good because if there's different kinds of moods, and a certain kind of mood, it can actually boost their crafting skill for the thing that they made. So like if they made a sword, because that's weaponsmithing, if it was the correct mood, it would boost them up, their weaponsmithing up to a very, very high level, which is very useful. I recommend just leaving artifacts set to yes, but I mean, if you're a new player, you might want to set it to no, because there is a chance that a dwarf might demand a material that you don't have in your fortress. And If they're not able to get that material, what will happen is they'll eventually go mad, and numerous effects can happen. One of which is it can make them go berserk, and they'll attack people in your fortress until you kill them. So it's just kind of it can be a little tricky. Uh, once you play the game a few times, you realize it's not very hard to keep all the materials that you might need around. So, but if that sounds unappealing to you, just turn it off. Graze coefficient, there's grazing animals in the game, so this just scales how often they need to eat. Starting labor skills, I'd leave it alone. Um, aquifers, I recommend having off. They can be really cool and fun, and you can do some really interesting things with them. But to me, it's more of an advanced thing, so I always just leave them off. Plus, I mean, it can ruin your fortress. So, the rest of this stuff I wouldn't really mess with. If you click on the graphics tab, um, Dwarf Fortress in its native state is just straight up ASCII graphics. So, can be very difficult to understand what's going on. So some people have came out and they've made graphical packs. You can, if you look on the internet, you can kind of Google and see what these look like. It defaults to Phobos here. I just leave it on it because it's what I'm used to. It's what I started with. So uh, you know, try it out. Just try the different ones, see which one you like, and then just stick with it. That's what I would say to do. The rest of this I wouldn't really mess with. Utilities. These are things that come packaged with Lazy Newb Pack that can be very helpful. Um, let's see. I like announcement filter because it opens up a separate window for announcements that happen in the game. And like it said, so that you don't miss anything. It's good. Dwarf Therapist is almost like a must-have for a new player because it lets you to open up a screen and look at your dwarves' jobs, what they have skill in, and easily, uh, easily tell them, okay, you can do this job, you can't do this job. So you can't give your dwarves in this game direct orders. The only thing you can do is enable the labor on them, and then hope that it catches. So some of these can be pretty cool. Sound Sense just adds some sound files to the game that are relevant. It can be pretty neat. At the same time, it can be very, very annoying. Um, you know, you'll hear a dwarf complaining about no fish to catch for 30 minutes, an hour on end, basically every few minutes. So, but I recommend trying it out. You might like it. Let's see, advanced. You can change the sound here. Here you can change the FPS caps in the game. So some people say that, see, this starts out I think at 50. Some people say if you lower it to 30, it can give a little bit of a boosting calculation. If you want the game to speed up a little bit at first, you can up the calculation FPS on it. Some people do that because they don't like the early game in Dwarf Fortress is a lot of like, okay, you seven dwarves, you four do this, you two do this, you one do this, and then you wait. It's not constantly you having to delegate tasks and do things. So some people want to get through that really quickly. I don't really care so much because to me that's part of the charm of the game. Let's see. I do recommend seasonal autosaves because Dwarf Fortress, especially if you're running the current version of it, has a tendency to crash. And at first it's not a big deal, but once you get a bigger fortress going and the FPS calculations do start dropping to where it's getting a little bit slower, the days are progressing a little bit slower, it can be really defeating to have something happen in your fortress, like maybe you get invaded and you fight them off and you don't lose anybody, which is really cool. But it can be really defeating to have, a crash happen the very next day. And you can save in the game, but when you save in the game, it exits you out of the game. So you can't make a save and then keep playing and then save scum back. That's not an option. Uh, Initial save, so that would save as soon as you embark. I think that that's not really necessary. Pause on saves, I highly recommend because as you play in the game, the saves can take a long time. So whenever it saves, that's a great time to stretch your legs, get up, get a drink. So if you have this set to pause, it will stay paused when the save is finished. Pause on load, another good option. Backup saves, I don't know if that's necessary. Okay, compress saves, again, me don't know. Processor priority, um, this is something I have set to real time. To what I really wanted was to make sure that the FPS stayed as high as it could. But I think I'm just going to set it to normal for this game. Yeah. Okay. And then last but not least, DF hack. This can be really, really useful stuff. Um, However, you have to know how the commands to type into the command lines. So, and as we play, you'll see me using it some. Workflow production targets can be really cool because if you want to make something, you have to queue it up. You can either queue it up at the workshop, or you can issue an order and have a manager verify that order, and then he'll queue it up for you. But if you have workflow production targets on, what will happen is at the workshop you can set a repeat job with like have a certain number of beds in the stockpile at all times. If that number dips below that number, then it automatically kicks production back on for that item. It's pretty handy, especially when you have a bigger fortress. Uh, True type fix, I'd say leave it on. Auto nest box, burial, it's good stuff. Stone sense, it's kind of cool, looks cool, but I don't really mess with it. Performance tweaks, leave it on, I'd say. Um, Mouse controls, I think I've played with this before and I didn't really care for it too much. But by all means, check it out. Bug fixes, sounds good to me, right? And automatic job assignments. This is a DF hack it's not enabled by default, but you can turn it on, and it's called auto labor. And if you use this, it's going to basically make Dwarf Therapist just a really nice looking spreadsheet to where you can admire your dwarves' skills and such. It renders Dwarf Therapist a bit obsolete. Um, the problem with auto labor for me is that sometimes it can be a bit wonky. Normally, it does a fantastic job of keeping your dwarfs busy, as long as you're, telling them things to do in a macro sense. But there have been times before where I really needed something to get done, and for some reason, auto labor just didn't want to do it. Now, it could have been operator error, could be something that I did. Um, who knows? Probably was because this game is very complex, and I feel like every time I play a game, I learn something new. So, once you have all these options set to the way that you want them to be set, what you'll do is you'll just click Play Dwarf Fortress, and it should launch the game. So you're seeing a bunch of screens pop up. All right. So let me get, you can't see some of my screens. You can only see my actual Dwarf Fortress screen. Let me get a few things in order here. Let's see. Okay, there's my command line. Okay. Oh my goodness, what just happened? It just went potato on me. Looks like a restart. It's this option, I think. Or maybe not. Okay. See, that's unfortunate. No. Alright, so I'm just going to go into Task Manager. And I'm going to shut it down that way. That's a shame. But not a big deal. End process. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's start it again and see if it does it again. Okay, so we've got the main screen going. Great. So what you're going to want to do when you first start is you have to create a new world. So you're going to go down to, and it did it again. What in the world is going on here? Okay, well, it fixed it. Maybe it'll stay that way. Okay. All right, so this is the world gen screen. Um, and you get to specify some things about the world that you want to create. So I will talk about each one of these in turn. So, first of all, world size. Um, this just determines, as you would think, how big the world is. Pocket is very small. Large is very large. The thing to keep in mind is the larger the world, the more computations that your computer actually has to do for the rest of the world. So if you've got an older system, a slower system, you're probably going to want to go no bigger than small. I normally play on medium because when I play on large, and my computer's not a bad computer, I mean it's not great, but it's fine. It gets the job done. Um, it even starts to bog down. So normally I go with medium. Sometimes I even go with small. Maybe we'll just go with the small world. That'll be good. Um, history. This when you start the game is actually going to generate some history for the world involving just like you know every person, every beast, every deity in the world is going to have a history generated for it. Some of them are going to die. Some of them are going to become heroes. It's just all RNG. So the longer the history, uh, it's going to take longer before you can actually get your embarkation set up. Also, longer history does factor into the computation time as you play the game. So because there'll be more historical figures in the game to actually factor in. So most people recommend leaving it on medium. Sometimes if I want to get into a game really quick, I'll go very short. You can see it's only 5 years, so it's really zoomy. So we'll just leave it on medium. Number of civilizations. This means how many other civs are in the world. Uh, so there can be dwarves, there can be elves, there can be humans, there can be goblins, kobolds. So if you set this to very high, that means there's going to be a ton of other civilizations in the world. Will also affect your computation time. If you set it to very low, you might run the opposite side of the spectrum, where there may not be a civilization for you to trade with. Trade caravan from another dwarven nation, very important for a new player. And if you set it to very low, there could be that chance. Honestly, I've never done that, so I really don't know. Maximum number of sites. This is how many distinct places can exist after world generation. Recommend just leave that on medium. Number of beasts. Okay. What this is like forgotten beasts, uh, very large creatures, mythical creatures. If you set this to very high, it's going to make the chances of encountering one quite a bit higher. If you set it to very low, it's going to make it very, very rare that you'll actually see one. Um, for a new player, you might even set it down to low, even very low, because these things, when they come to your fortress, they're lured by the wealth. If you have invaders off, I don't think you really have to worry about this, but they're lured by the wealth, and when they come to your fortress, they can really cause problems. So, for a new player, maybe set it to low or very low. I'm going to leave it on medium. It doesn't really bother me too much. Natural savagery. Um, if you've got if you select very high savagery, what that means is that the world is going to be very inhospitable. Um, it's going to be harder to settle in. If you set it to very low, it's going to be very blissful and serene and easier to settle in. So for a new player, as you can see, you probably want to set that to low or very low. I'll just leave it on medium. And then mineral occurrence. This basically pertains to when you dig down, because you're a dwarf, you want to do dwarfy things. Things dwarfs do, they find ore. That's what they do, right? So they dig. So as you dig, you're going to encounter gems, you're going to encounter ore. If you've got this mineral occurrence set to like everywhere, that means like when you dig down, there's just going to be ore and metal and gems everywhere. That's just going to happen everywhere. You're going to have tons. It's going to flow out of your ears. Um, Even frequent is a ton. Uh, on the other end of the spectrum, if you set it to very rare, it's going to be very challenging to find a dig site that's going to have any kind of uh, like multiple metals is something we're going to look for because there's certain kind of metals that are better than others, and we'll get into that later. But for a new player, you're probably going to want to set it to frequent. Normally, I even like to play on frequent just because I don't like to see the same minerals over and over and over again. I like a little variety. So, but I think we'll go sparse just to show it off. And then once you have everything set to the way you want it, you just hit Y, and it's gonna generate the world. So, because we've selected a small world size, it should not take very long. So, let's go. And as you can see, it is now generating the world. Oman Uru, the realms of forever. That's the name of the world. It's creating the regions. Right now it's working on the dark goblin pits of Tuzurar, the forest of warriors. And if you watch the actual map, you can actually see things changing in the map as the years progress, which I think is absolutely fascinating. It's a great part of the game. Um, and as you play more, you'll understand more. Right now, it just looks like a bunch of just gobbledygook to you. But I can tell you from looking at this, if you look here at these purple things, that means it's haunted. So this whole area on this backside of this mountain is haunted. And that's, stuff like that really intrigues me. I think it's really cool. Um, like this image right here, this means there's a goblin camp here. And it's in the middle of like a haunted place. Looks, there's a lot of haunted going on here. These signs, these yellow signs, that means elves. So there's a bunch of elves here. There's a goblin. These guys are brave. There's some goblins here, right next to some dwarves. So I bet there's a lot of fighting that goes on there. Let's see. There's some humans here. That's a bigger human town. That's pretty neat. I really, my imagination just kind of runs wild with this kind of stuff, but looks pretty neat. So at this point, the world itself is completely finished. We have the option to accept it by hitting enter. We can abort the world, just completely scrap it, and do it again by hitting A or P. We can export image info. We can use our movement keys to view it, which we kind of did. We're just going to accept it. We're going to take it. Age of Myth. Now, there are different ages in the game, and each of them pertains to like, how many mythological creatures exist versus how many have been killed, and the states of the civilizations. It's actually very, very deep and interesting. But don't worry about that now. All right, let's hit enter. Okay, so now it's going to do a few calculate-y type things. It's going to offload some units. Yeah. Might take a minute here. It's probably taking some extra time because I'm actually, encoding the video at the same time. All right, so now we have a world. Now what you need to do is you need to hit start playing. So you're going to go down here. You're going to go bam. You're going to hit start playing. And as you can see, I have quite a smorgasbord of worlds here. And that's because I'm a bit of a creation whore. I love creating new worlds and embarking. And then I get bored after playing for a few hours. And then I'm like, I'm done. Or the frame rate gets to where it's just so low that I can't abide it. And I'm just like, I'm done. So we're going to go with Oman Uru, which is our newest creation. We're going to hit enter. And there are 3 different modes you can play in. Actually, just 2. Legends is where you can go into that world and you can like look at any creature in the world and see its history. It's so amazing. Adventure is more of your traditional roguelike type. Think, like Angband or Hack. It's kind of neat. It's got a lot of potential to it, but most people who play the game tend to play it for just the Dwarf Fortress aspect. So that's what we're going to be doing. All right, so it's going to do a few more calculation type stuff here, and then it's going to advance some time. It's going to go up to that little X in granite the 15th, and bam, now we're at embarkation. And I think that we have put a ton of stuff into this video already. Your head's probably spinning, but I hope you're excited. I am. I'm really excited to do this. Show you guys, kind of how I embark. There's lots of different strategies. We'll go over that next time. I'll show you how to allocate your points, how to pick a good site, etc., etc. So I hope you join me for it next time. And until then, get your game on.